Hey folks, the following is a conversation with Claudio from the KryptosChain YouTube channel. He's a creator and analyst who lives in Spain. So we're going to talk about a bunch of interesting topics in this interview today. We're going to talk about the current markets. We're going to talk about the EU when it comes to crypto. And we're going to talk all about Polkadot. So strap in because this is going to be an exciting one. All right, Claudio, let's just jump right in here. And I want to start general today as someone working as a creator or also just someone generally in this broader industry. I'd like to get your take on the current markets. Like, how are you feeling? Bear, bull, sideways? Just give me your general thoughts.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on here. It's a great pleasure to be here, Kevin. We've been chatting for quite some time. Yeah, regards to the markets, it's bearish at the moment, especially because most of my holdings are in altcoins. As many other people who have been following my channel as well, we are mostly an altcoin channel. And so it is painful to watch the market, but I have been in crypto since 2017, I believe, kind of like yourself. I'm not sure if you started a bit earlier or around the same time. But I mean, we've already been through a bear cycle. We know what it feels like. 2018, 2019 were brutal. Some parts of 2020, especially during the pandemic. And so, we've been through this before. We felt the pain. And so I think we are in that same stage, but the pain is bigger because we had such a big bull market, in 2021, because prices were going up so high so quickly. Also, the dump was very harsh. But if we look at the Bitcoin price, like, I mean, that's doing okay. Like, we haven't seen it go back to 3K. So it's not it's not like the pandemic has reached the Bitcoin itself, right? If you know what I mean. So it has hurt the altcoins, but we can see that the king of all the crypto is holding quite well. So I'm feeling quite optimistic from that perspective with Bitcoin. But I won't lie. I mean, I am concerned with the altcoin dominance being lost. And I do think we're going to get that back, but it is going to be a challenge because let's not forget that there are just so many old coins out there compared to what we had in 2020 when the bull market started. And so there's going to be a bigger share that's going to be split across these different altcoins, whenever liquidity enters the market. And so I don't think we're going to see probably a bull market or at least some sort of sensation of a bull market until maybe the end of 2024, 2025. That's my current take on the market right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. You actually kind of preempted a lot of questions I wanted to ask, like whether you thought this current bear market was worse than the previous one. You said you do think it's worse?
Yes, I do think it's worse in terms of pain points because there was just so much liquidity pumped into the last bull market. The dump has really been harsh. I mean, we had institutions dumping as well. A lot of retail dumping, a lot more retail than before. Also, there's the leverage traders that are in the game now. Leverage trading wasn't a big thing back in 2018 and 2019. I mean, you've been in it, you know it. We didn't get these leverage trading exchanges getting promoted and being used by so many people. And so, that also has an impact, and all these different factors. And so I do think that the pain is bigger. And I mean, people have been panicking. It's the same sort of sentiment, people usually panicking, selling, thinking everything is a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme, we're not going to get back in. But then those same people will likely get back in the next bull run. So I think we just need to be patient. And I think one of the pain points here is patience. How many people are really patient, to be fair? Because like even myself, like even though I've been through a bear market, I was quite patient back then. I've been accumulating a lot, but then as soon as the bull market started, I had sold a lot of my positions on the way up, but I didn't actually wait for like the real bull market to start. So I ended up buying back in at higher prices. And so that was a bit painful because had I been patient, I would have been in a different financial situation right now, but we can only learn from our mistakes, so hopefully we won't repeat them. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned earlier about BTC and ETH, or you mentioned BTC, but ETH too, it's still at like holding at a decent level, right? But in the prior bear market, it went down to what, like 3,008 and then 80 for
Yeah.
ETH, which was insane as a holder to watch. It really felt like those were dead, right? And it doesn't feel like those two big ones are dead this time at least. But thank you for your views on the market. That's really helpful. So you live in Spain, which is in the EU, and it's just really interesting to see how different jurisdictions around the world are diverging when it comes to like regulations or friendliness towards our industry. So I just want to ask you for like the ground floor, how do you feel as someone in the EU when it comes to like the future of this industry?
Yeah, so first of all, I have to say that things have changed a lot compared to 2018 and 2019. Back then, most of the countries in the EU didn't really care about crypto that much. I mean, even if they did, they weren't like really strict or anything. People weren't even reporting their taxes, their gains to the tax authorities. But now things have changed a lot. I mean, I'm seeing like a EU law being passed around now in various countries, and a lot of them are adopting it. Now, while the taxation does differ from country to country within the EU, the rules are kind of similar now across different countries. I mean, I've been talking to people from other countries within the EU, and they all said the same thing. So now tax reporting is done differently. So they are stricter when it comes to us, telling them which cryptocurrencies we've been buying, which ones we've been selling, what we've been trading, So rather than just saying we bought at this price this coin and then we just sold and this is our gain, now they want to know the in-depth information. So they actually want to know which old coins you are buying and selling, or even Bitcoin if that was the case. So they want to know the detail. And in terms of the EU regulations and stuff like that, I think that they're definitely more accepting in that sense, right? They're willing to accept crypto. They're more open to it. Like we're not seeing like strict, restrictions like we've seen in the US. But at the same time, I think that there will be more regulation in terms of verification to see what people are holding. So they will be keeping an eye out on you, especially because in the EU, what people need to understand is that even if you're banking with a specific bank in a specific country, if you use another bank from another country within the EU, they'll actually know about each other, So it's not like you can do anything weird there, And so there's basically a link between the different countries, just like there is in the US between the different states. So at the
Got
end of
it.
the day, it's all about regulation, and I think we're not going to get away from that. We just have to accept it. We have to learn to live with it. But I do think that privacy is going to be a bit of a challenge, and that's going to hurt a lot of people, especially those of us who have been in crypto for so long and we support privacy. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. How much have you looked into Mika or heard about it?
I
The
haven't actually heard about it.
MICA, or maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's the European regulation, the umbrella regulation.
Yeah, I'm not actually familiar with that, sorry.
Okay, no worries. It's just so like in the US we've been asking for comprehensive regulation,
Yeah.
but the SEC refuses to. Well, actually, it's Congress that hasn't done it yet, right? But then the SEC, because of that lack of it, they're not doing rulemaking either. But it looks like the EU has a legislation going into effect, I think next year, which should be interesting to see how it like affects businesses there specifically. I think you're right though. I think it's like meant for centralized entities, like the Coinbases, the custodians, KYC AML providers, but it's maybe not as friendly to like small anonymous teams as you said in terms of privacy.
Exactly. And one of the things I've noticed is like in Spain, Binance have actually opened an office under a tertiary company. And so anyone who has an account on Binance in Spain are required to do KYC and also to submit like proof of address. And then this company can find out that information. So there's definitely a lot more regulation and stricter than it used to be, a number of years ago. So they're really going at it like at country level now, but following the specific European rules. And so
Yeah.
we'll see how things go, because these European rules are quite general. I don't think they're going to apply like on a high level, but then each country then does their own different thing. They're not going to tell what each country should do when it comes to
Right.
these smaller rulings, right? So that's why you're going to have crypto-friendly countries like Malta, for example. Portugal used to be one, but now it's kind of gone down the hill, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, you got Cyprus, you got Malta, and then Eastern Europe as well. A lot of these countries, like they'll because they have these low corporation taxes, they're obviously welcoming crypto companies there, Web3 companies. And so we'll see how things go. I do think there's going to be a lot of building going on in Europe, but unfortunately, I don't see it on that same scale as we're seeing it in Asia now. I mean, there's a lot of it going on in
Right.
Singapore, Dubai as well. There's definitely a lot more there than there is in Europe, I think. At least that's what I'm seeing, but I could be completely wrong. I mean, behind the scenes, there are just so many things happening that it's hard to just keep track of everything.
No, I think you're right. I mean, Asia is a hotbed, the Middle East, and then also parts of Europe now. Like you saw the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, they opened up an office in the UK like very recently. So that was like a sign of welcome, for
Yeah.
it was their crypto branch that opened up a branch there. But actually, you mentioned something interesting. You mentioned Binance, and that's something that I've been thinking about lately. They've been getting squeezed from all sides, like a lot lately. Like you saw their Dutch regulators kind of kick them out, and then they just got news today that they can't operate in the UK. So, and then the SEC sued them. What are your views on this, like as a whole, on Binance as a whole, where they are today, what's happening to them, and what's going to happen to them?
Yeah, I think it's fear from central entities, right? The central authorities. They're just not happy to see an exchange gain so much popularity and gain so much power. And let's face it, I mean, they've got really rich users. They've got like a lot of volume, a lot of liquidity. Like, I'm not saying CZ is an angel or anything, right? I'm sure he's done a lot of nasty stuff, but he has done a lot of good for the crypto space if you look at it from a different perspective, right? And we have to thank him for that, because maybe a lot of the things that we've gotten up to now wouldn't have been possible without Binance. And so, from like a crypto enthusiast perspective and supporter, obviously I want Binance to survive because I think we need them. I want all these big exchanges to survive, like Coinbase, Kraken. They may not be the cleanest, but at least they've been doing a lot of good work for the space. And hopefully they can get past this, pay the fines, apply the necessary rules, and restrictions, regulations, whatever they need to, and just let people continue to trade and enjoy the crypto space as they usually do till now. So
I think
I can
you
only hope that they're going to leave them alone, and they're going to have maybe licenses in each different country if necessary. Kind of like with the gambling websites, like if you've ever played Texas Hold'em, you need like certain licenses for certain countries to operate in them. So I think we're going to get to that kind of point with Binance and with other exchanges as well. That's the way it seems like it to me, based on these smaller companies that are being created to basically gather information on behalf of the exchanges that are operated in certain countries. So that's what I think.
For me, I would describe my view on Binance as they are needed, but I wish they weren't,
Yeah.
which is kind of similar to what you were saying. Here's my prediction of Binance, and let me know what you think. Based on all the squeezing from regulators that we've seen, my prediction is that they pay like a massive fine, like maybe $1 billion fine, and CZ steps down, but no other like criminal charges or anything. What do you think? Do you think I'm crazy for that prediction, or do you
I
think it's likely?
No, I think you could be right, because I mean CZ has been targeted quite a lot, and he's been accused of manipulation and different accusations. But I think that Binance is going to survive. I just don't think they're going to shut down completely. I believe that even the SEC has ties to Binance. I mean, you've seen what Gary Gensler was. The Binance lawyers mentioned that he wanted to be an advisor for Binance at some point. So he's obviously very tied into into the crypto community himself. Like at a high level. So I think it's all about following certain groups and certain parties, and they favor certain parties. And if they're not part of that same party, then they're going to go for the attack. And I think that's what's happening there. I think Gary Gensler is part of a different group than Binance and CZ. And that's where we're getting this conflict, at a high level. But us smaller guys will probably never know the real truth behind the scenes. But this is just my suspicion based on what we know so far, with Gary Gensler. and his ties to Binance previously and to other VCs like Harrington, for example. He's been linked to them, in the past, and also Algorand. So, there's definitely something going on there for sure.
Um, by the way, does Spain let you trade futures?
It does, yeah. Yeah, you can.
Okay, so when Coinbase releases their international futures exchange, are you going to try them out?
No, because I don't trade in futures. I
Oh,
just
you
try to stay
don't.
away from that. Yeah, I
Okay.
tried it once and I said, nah, this is not for me. I mean, I could probably do it if I put my mind to it and I train myself and I watch a lot of tutorials and all that, because there are many traders out there, like not even crypto traders, but like traditional traders that'll teach you like really good stuff, how to do, like there's one guy called Rainer Tao from Singapore. He does like really good tutorial series on trading. So like I used to follow him at the beginning, when I was learning how to trade. So I do understand the basics of trading, but I just don't want to go too depth into that because I just have other stuff to do, that I prefer
Yeah,
to focus on content creation rather
right,
than
for
do
sure.
trading. But yeah, you never know where the future ends. You might end up being in a situation, if this bear market continues, that I might just have to convert myself into a trader eventually. But let's hope that won't be the case. I mean, I love to do content, so
Yeah,
we'll
same.
see.
Speaking of content, you are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Polkadot content creators out there. So I want to spend some time today chatting about Polkadot and picking your brain on it. The first question is kind of tying to combining two themes we've been talking about today. So I've always heard these rumors that the Polkadot team has like been talking and working with the SEC from the beginning, and that they've secured DOT as not a security. There's always been rumors about that from years ago. But it's been rumors. I don't think I've seen anything official about it. And I'm not sure they can even like just flaunt that. Like the SEC probably wouldn't allow that. But can you speak on that? Like what do you think on you probably know more than me
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about that myself as well, because there have been a lot of tweets recently, even from the Web3 Foundation, the company that has funded Parity and Polkadot, that they have morphed DOT into a software from a security. And when they're saying they've morphed it, what they mean is that they followed the certain guidelines, you know, to ensure that they pass that test, where something is deemed to be a security or not. But until there will be a no action letter from the SEC, there are no guarantees. However, the SEC don't have to issue that no action letter. So, we're in that situation where we may never see a no action letter. We may never see the SEC say, yeah, Polkadot is really a software, but then Polkadot is really a software. So, we're in that situation where people are thinking, well, will we ever get an answer? And the answer is probably not, or maybe we will.
Could they
There's no
have a no
guarantees
action?
here, and I think that seeing the recent article, where Robinhood mentioned the number of cryptocurrencies that are deemed to be securities getting delisted, as you could see there, Polkadot wasn't in that list. So that
Exactly.
tells us that they are really following the guidelines. Otherwise, they would have been on that list.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like they listed a lot of competitors per se, right? Like Matic, Solana,
Yeah,
whatever, whatever. But Dot was not on that list, and neither was AVAX. I think AVAX was not
yeah.
on that list either, which is kind of surprising too. But um, do you think they could have a no action letter, but just like not allowed to share it, or no?
I don't think so. I was actually told, I'm not allowed to say by who, but I was actually told that somebody at Parity needs to sign something uh, before something is going to be officially announced. Apparently, that is possible. But I mean, they haven't said, they haven't said anything in relation to what they need to sign and who needs to sign. It's just that somebody needs to sign something for something official to be said. This is the last thing that I was told, which was like the most, let's say, how can I say, like
Secretive,
insider info that I got,
right?
from Parity. Not from Parity, but from an individual who's close to Parity. So yeah, we'll have to see if there is going to be something there, or maybe that individual refused to sign for a specific reason. We're not sure, but I am hoping that things are okay with Polkadot in that perspective. So we'll see how things go. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not going to be deemed a security, that can only be a good thing for Polkadot. But
How do you
we
think
both
they
know
were?
that the price is pretty hurt, regardless if it's deemed a software or not.
How do you think Dot and AVAX, or actually the companies or teams behind it, were able to kind of navigate it properly, whereas Matic, Solana, and what was Cardano were not? How do you think? Yeah,
I think it's the way they've conducted themselves. I mean, Polkadot, Gavin Wood in particular, like, and most of the Parity employees, they've been very careful as to how they promote the cryptocurrency. They've always promoted the tech. I mean, if you follow Gavin Wood on Twitter, you'd see that most of the tweets are about tech this, tech that, education in the blockchain space. Like he's been running a lot of academies as well. And so, he's really focusing on bringing those developers on board and growing the product, like getting them to build on Polkadot, and let's say on Polkadot, when I say on Polkadot, getting them to build maybe a parachain, maybe a parathread, right? Maybe even an L2 on top of one of the existing parachains, because Polkadot is a layer zero, it's a foundation layer. You cannot
right.
build something on it, you can connect something to it. So that's important to know. And so he's always been focused on that, and he just didn't really care about DOT itself and the value that it may bring. He hasn't made any promises that, DOT is going to do this and that. I don't believe they've been working with any market makers either, at least not publicly. So that's another plus, because if you are working with market
Oh,
makers, apparently that can hurt you in terms of being considered a security. At least from my
dang.
limited knowledge, there could be more detail there that I might be missing, but I think this has helped them big time, and
Yeah, I think you
if you
may be
look at the
onto
other
something.
ecosystems, like even like Cardano, I mean, I like Cardano as well. I'm not a maxi or anything with Polkadot. I love Polkadot, but I'm not a maxi. So I am, happy to try to look into other ecosystems and try to understand. I've been looking into Cosmos as well. I've been doing content there. I started looking into Cardano recently to try to understand all the L2s building on there as well. And so, it's one of those things where I think that it could be to do with the market makers and the individuals promoting the coin that may actually end up hurting it. And that's probably why, ones like Cardano are hurt from that aspect.
I think you're onto something about the promotion of it too, because in the filings, in the lawsuits, they would like pick out snippets of like, oh, the Polygon team said this, the Cardano team wrote this, or something. So
Yeah.
you may be onto something there. So if the Polkadot and Avalanche team didn't do that, then that would be a big difference maker, which
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
absolutely.
So speaking of Cosmos and layer twos and whatnot, like in my opinion, Polkadot has been kind of stale compared to all the other potential competitors to it. Whether it be Cosmos, which has maybe not recently, but like maybe 6 months ago, it was in the spotlight, and then all the Ethereum layer twos, and then all the Solana like Sui, Aptos, those Move competitors, right? There's a lot of competition. Can Polkadot be competitive versus all of those other choices, in your opinion?
From a technical perspective, absolutely. My concern is that in crypto, I mean, you've been in it long enough, I've been in it long enough. In crypto, it takes more than just tech. You need to have good market makers, you need to have good content creators, large ones who are willing to support you. You need to have media companies who are willing to support you, or maybe if you pay them. And so I think there's definitely the marketing aspect that's hurting Polkadot, but not only the marketing aspect, it's also the networks. Like, is Polkadot networked with some of these larger VCs or maybe market makers like Jump? Like, I haven't seen Jump support any of the projects within Polkadot, for example. I haven't seen Wintermute or also big market makers support that either. A16Z. So, all of these are like they're following these other ecosystems if you check them out, but they're not following Polkadot. So there's something there. It could be that Parity have decided to not associate themselves to those guys, to those entities, because they have found shady behavior going on. I'm not saying it's definitely happening, but it does raise, questionable questions, because the actions are speaking for themselves. You've seen, like, when you see these price pumps all of a sudden, that's a sign that something's going on there when it comes to these market makers. So, to me, it seems to me like Polkadot are kind of separating themselves from the rest because of this, and they're trying to take this educational path towards mass adoption. This is going to hurt them, I think, at least in the short term, but I'm hoping that in the long term, we're eventually going to see Web2 companies maybe adopt Polkadot, institutions perhaps, because they're following the right path, rather than the shady path that crypto is known for by a lot of people in Web2. So that's what I'm hoping for, but this is, again, it's a big if, because you never know if this will be enough. I'm hoping it's going to be enough, because Polkadot are definitely playing the long-term card game.
So, in terms of Polkadot's ecosystem, like there's mainly parachains and other apps built on top. Which ones are kind of more promising? They don't have to be new ones. They could be the older ones. But which ones are more promising in your opinion in terms of getting actual adoption now and in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I would say Astar Network, if you're familiar with it. It's a project in Japan, which is a parachain as well. So they've recently partnered with Sony, also with Toyota, which is a huge partnership. They've also partnered with potato chips company, the biggest one in Japan, apparently, to create some NFTs. And so Sota, who's the founder of Astar Network, has also been mentioned in the Forbes of Japan as one of the most important tech leaders there. So a lot of people in Japan know about Astar Network more than they do in the rest of the world. And so that's one of the projects that I think is very promising when it comes to that. When I say promising, I mean the tech. Once again, the price, unfortunately, I think is hurt, simply because, again, lack of market makers. VCs, the VCs that have invested are getting their coins, and so some of them are selling, because that's how it is with the VC game. You can't control that. And so I think the tokenomics aspect can hurt them in the short term, but in the long run, if they will be promoting that tech, if they will be doing these integrations with Web2 companies, I think Astar can prove to be a pretty good one. The second one I would say is Moonbeam Network, which is very similar to Astar, except instead of working with WASM smart contracts like Astar is, which probably something I should have said, as well as EVM, Moonbeam are purely focused on EVM, and they're in the US as well. So they're working on a different kind of game. They're trying to attract a different type of audience, but they're also very successful. They've got a lot of funding. They've actually got grants, which they can use to support other teams who want to build on top of them. And so that helps right now. Like if you have a small startup and you want to build on Moonbeam, you want to create that EVM solution, you can do so. You can create that a smart contract with the solution. If you have a plan, you create a proposal, it gets voted upon by the community, and then you can get funding for that. So they have funding, and that gives me trust. If I see funding, I think trust, because they're in it for the long haul. They have enough funding to sustain. They can go through this bear market, and hopefully, we can see some things come true. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the L2s on there right now are pretty crappy. There are some NFT collections on there. There are some mini games, DeFi platforms, DEXs. The two DEXs that are there are quite good, actually. There's one called Stella Swap, another one called Beam Swap, which is also launching a perpetuals exchange to compete with GMX. It's going to be the only one in the Polkadot ecosystem doing that. So yeah, I can see Moonbeam do well as Astar. And then the third one I would say, which should be quite good in my opinion, and one I personally support, is Fala Network, which have started on Ethereum, as in they launched a smart contract there with their token. Now they're also on Polkadot and Kusama, which is the canary network of Polkadot. They're actually connecting Web 2 to Web 3 through cloud computing. So what they're doing is that you can maintain the high computational power in your Web 2 application, but migrate that over to Web 3. Which is pretty cool. They've just recently launched their FAT contract, which allows developers to do that. So now there are a bunch of developers that have been waiting for this launch and are now going to use FAT contracts. So we'll see how things go in the next couple of months, and what we can expect in terms of technical development there.
So that makes sense. Sounds like there's definitely activity going on in the Polkadot ecosystem. But like you said earlier, you've also studied other ecosystems, Cardano ecosystem, Cosmos ecosystem, and you know of the other ones, even if you haven't looked in depth into them. How do you personally predict that things are going to shake out? Like just in general, even without picking a winner, do you think that all these different ecosystems are all going to have popular dApps, a lot of liquidity, etc.? Or do you think it's going to consolidate one day where like one kind of dominates and the rest are more niche?
Yeah, I definitely think one will dominate and the rest will be more niche. I just don't think it's sustainable for all these different ecosystems to continue to dominate, especially if there will be regulations. If there would be no regulations, I would say, yeah, some would be favored more than others for sure, because of what I was saying earlier with the market makers controlling the market, with the exchanges, with the content creators, and so on working together, and the VCs. Whereas now with regulations, I do suspect that the ones that follow that right path are going to be the ones that are going to be successful, but they also need to work hard to ensure that they can bring that killer app that's going to attract, a lot of people on there, to promote the ecosystem ultimately, because that app is on that ecosystem building there. So that's the reason that Gavin Wood is so focused on this tech, and not only Gavin, but everyone else at Parity, especially the core engineers, to bring those developers on board, because you never know where that next lucid mind, builds something cool, and then it's going to attract that liquidity, it's going to attract the users, and hopefully it's going to make the ecosystem explode. But yeah, we can only hope for that. This is only obviously speculation.
Right.
It could be that none of this happens and it could just end up dying. It could be that the SEC might say, actually, you are deemed a security and it's all game over. And then we go back to the board, And so, yeah, that could happen too. We have to be realistic. We can't just be pipe dreamers here. But based on what I'm seeing so far, I think they are following the right path.
I do want to ask you to dream a little bit though, in terms of like which niche do you think is the most promising in your mind going into this next cycle? It doesn't have to be like in any particular ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, I know it's a bit weird, but the memes seem to be the biggest niche right now. And like, I'm not a big fan of that, unfortunately, but I know there are people who are, and it seems to be doing well right now. There's a lot of talk around it. I also
No, I
think
don't mean.
perpetuals
Okay, go
will
ahead.
do well. The reason why I'm saying perpetuals is because they will always be gamblers. Like you've seen that poker has been doing really well. There was a time when Texas Hold'em was played by a lot of people around the world, and it still is, right? Maybe not as popular now. And so you could see why perpetuals could do really well in crypto as well, because there are so many people hoping to make money. And let's face it, a lot of people are in it for the money. Less people are in it for the tech, and maybe somewhere halfway through you might get people that are in it for the tech and the money. And they want to see the change. They like the revolution, the revolutionary aspect of crypto, and blockchain tech. So I think that those two niches are going to do well. I think blockchain gaming could be another one. I know that has been talked about in previous years, and it didn't do so well at the time. But that's mostly because everything was so slow. It wasn't so developed. Like the field itself wasn't so developed when it comes to using blockchain and the slow transactions. But I do think that blockchain gaming could do really well in the next bull market if there will be this next cool game that's going to be adopted by a lot of users, a lot of gamers. Because if you can make that seamless connection where a gamer can use a platform that uses blockchain tech without them having to purchase crypto in any way, if you can just like avoid that, maybe create a fiat gateway on ramp, you do the buying behind the scenes seamlessly so that none of them can even know about that, then I think that could actually be even more successful than telling people to go buy this cryptocurrency on that exchange, do KYC on that exchange, send them to their wallets, save the seed phrase. That's going to piss gamers off when they just want to play a game, right? So you
Exactly.
got to make it simple. It's all about simplicity. I think when we're going to see that, that's going to be good.
All right, Claudio, thank you so much. That was all the questions I had on my mind today. I'm going to leave your links in the description for our viewers to check out. And do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Just thank you for having me on. And I just want to say that try to be patient. You know, it is very difficult, but if you are patient, it will pay off. Obviously, think about not financial advice, but think about the ecosystems, right? You don't want to be in these really low caps and to wait until the bull market comes, because you never know if many of these will survive. Think about being in some of these ecosystem coins, distribute, diversify as much as possible in these, because one or a number of them will be successful in the next bull run. And you just want to make sure that you're strapped in and ready for takeoff.
All right. Thank you so much.